What's up, guys? Happy New Year. I'm sure most of us are really happy that it is a new year. We're here in 2021. I'm very excited because this year we're gonna spend a lot of time producing content for this YouTube channel. We're gonna keep giving you guys the testimonials and informational videos, everything you need to feel comfortable about scalp micropigmentation. So make sure you keep checking back here, subscribe to this channel. And we're gonna kick off today talking about a topic that many of our clients always wonder about, and that is how do we apply the pigment into the skin? How deep does it go? Where does it sit inside the skin? So let's talk about that today. Okay, so here I have our trusty skin model. This looks like something out of probably your biology class, but it's really important to us as scalp practitioners because we need to understand the skin because that's our canvas, right? So there's three main layers of the skin. I'm taking you back to biology class here, okay? The top layer, this very thin top layer, is called the epidermis. And this is what many of us think of when we think of actual skin. We think of the flesh and the barrier layer that protects us from, the outside environment. That's this top layer here. Below that, in this region, is the dermis. And this is the part that's really important to us as scalp practitioners because this is the area that we play with. This is where we're gonna be depositing pigment. And inside the dermis, you have things like the hair follicle, the sebaceous glands, the nerves. There's a lot going on in this area. And below that, you have the subcutaneous layer. And this is muscle and tissue that's connected to the skull. We are not going that deep, I promise. But that is a very important layer nonetheless. It's part of your skin structure. All right, so now you're probably wondering, where do we place our needle? Where do we place the pigment to get that really good replicated follicular look? Well, like I mentioned, that's gonna be in the dermis region, okay? The dermal layer of the skin, but it's very important that we get the right sweet spot.
That's your sweet spot right there.
Because we don't wanna go too deep. Too deep, that can cause migration of pigment. It can cause what we call dermal staining. This is sometimes what you see happen with traditional tattoos. Because traditional tattoos tend to go deeper than what we're doing here at Scalp Micropigmentation, you sometimes get some of that staining or that migration. We don't want that, and we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen. So, where we place our pigment is going to be in the top layer of the dermis, kind of in this region. All right, and you'll notice that is definitely a little bit deeper than the epidermis, and there's a reason for that. The reason that we're not just kind of scratching or just pricking the epidermal layer is because anything placed there is going to be very, very short term. It'll fade out very, very quickly. The epidermis is always in constant cell renewal. It's also more susceptible to UVA and UVB sunlight, so over time that would break down much quicker. We want to get more longevity, but we want to do it safely, so that is why we're not going to be as shallow as the epidermis, but we're certainly not going to be too deep in the dermis to cause any staining. We want to be in our sweet spot, which is this top layer of the dermis, okay? That's typically about 1.5 to 2 millimeters deep. Not very deep, okay? However, deep enough to get a good longevity out of your treatment. During your scalp micropigmentation procedure, your practitioner is going to take special care to make sure that they're inserting the pigment very carefully and at the right depth. Remember, they want to hit that top layer of the dermis, about 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters, depending on the thickness of your skin. And we do that by, one, setting our needle to the correct configuration, as well as our hand pressure. That's what we train to do. We train our hand muscles and our muscle memory of the hand to really deposit exactly to the depth that we need to create that perfect replicated follicular look. So I'm sure many of you wondering now, great, we get it, the pigment will sit in the top layer of the dermis, but how long does it last there? How long will it reside in that area? Well, we expect, because of the depth that we're putting the pigment at, that your treatment's gonna last anywhere from 4 to 6 years before you'll probably return for a touch-up. And that's because, again, the dermis is more stable and consistent and less susceptible to the sunlight and the immune system to break it down. However, it will fade over time because we're not going as deep as a typical tattoo. But we are making sure that you're gonna get some longevity out of this. Remember, that's why we're not gonna put the pigment in the top layer of the dermis, which would fade out very, very rapidly. Another big part of getting to the right depth level in the skin is the needle we use, all right? Of course, right, this is what we're using to insert the pigment, so this is a very important factor. Now, the needles we use are scalp micropigmentation specific. They're tiny, tiny micro needles. And what's very important is how the scalp artist configures and sets the needle in their machine to get to the right depth level. And it's gonna be a mix of the setting we use, again, with the hand pressure to make sure that we're hitting that sweet spot in the dermis. In addition to the needle, pigment is really, really important because this is what we are depositing into the skin. It's important to know that we're only using pigment that is designed for your skin and that will hold color for the long term. You see that the skin can be a little bit complicated, but this is what your scalp artist trained to understand. Again, I've said it many times, the skin is our canvas. And not all skin is exactly the same. Some can be a little thicker, some thinner. Some can have some certain skin conditions we see a lot of, things like dermatitis or psoriasis, but we're trained to understand that and work through that. And that's why it's very, very important that you choose a practitioner and a clinic that has a lot of experience and knows exactly how to deposit the pigment. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this informative and you know a little bit more about skin structure and where we place pigment. I'm gonna bring this guy back to my 8th grade biology teacher. But as always, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like the video, and I cannot wait to give you guys some more content this year. I'll see you guys soon.